Yeah, please.
Okay, we'll go ahead and begin then. So good morning, I'm Radhe, and I'd like to welcome you all to New Perspectives, which is an integral yoga platform sponsored by Auro University and Surat, India, and the Sri Aurobindo Integral Life Center in Surat and here in Fountain Inn, South Carolina. Today is the second in a series of webinars on the development of consciousness. The mother explained that in yoga, all is centered around one's consciousness. It is consciousness that is to be oriented, developed, and transformed. For this purpose, Sri Aurobindo and the mother spoke of 4 movements that are conducive to its development and transformation. The first is the ascension or heightening towards higher realms, including the superconscient. The second, its counter movement, is descension, or going down into the depths of one's being to connect the superconscient with the subconscient. The third movement, conducive to the transformation of consciousness, is deepening, or going within to uncover the psychic being, the soul. And the fourth, its counter movement, is the expansion or widening of consciousness into the cosmic planes. So ascension, descension, deepening, and widening are the 4 movements of consciousness. Last week, Matthias Cornelissen provided an overview of these 4 movements before addressing the ascension to higher realms. Today, we are honored to have with us Dr. Soumitra Basu, who will speak on the descent into the subconscious and inconscient realms. I'd like to extend a very warm welcome to Dr. Basu. Dr. Basu, it's a real honor to have you as our guest speaker today. At this time, Dr. Vladimir Yatsenko here at the Sri Aurobindo Integral Life Center in Fountain Inn and our moderator for today's webinar will formally introduce Dr. Basu and open our New Perspectives Forum. Vladimir?
Thank you, Radhe. Let me introduce our eminent speaker, researcher, and practitioner of integral yoga psychology and psychotherapy in the light of Sri Aurobindo, Dr. Soumitra Basu, who is a psychiatrist by profession, working with consciousness paradigms. He conducts workshops on personal growth and is a founder editor of Namaha, the Journal of Integral Health. He has authored the book Integral Health. He is deeply interested in the vision of integral yoga of Sri Aurobindo and the Mother with regard to mental health. He has developed a module of consciousness-based psychology. And together with Michael Majovic, has authored a book on consciousness-based psychology. It is in a press now, so which looks at psychopathology and counseling from entirely new perspective that arises from the experiential teachings of Sri Aurobindo and the Mother. He can be accessed on consciousnessbasedcounseling.com. So today is the topic of the utmost importance, the descent into and ascent from the subconscious and inconscient realms of consciousness, involution and evolution, the 2 fundamental concepts of integral yoga and the Vedic philosophy. So without further ado, I invite Dr. Soumitra Basu to shed some light onto these profound topics of involution and evolution of consciousness in the light of Sri Aurobindo. Please, Soumitra.
Thank you, and thank you all for inviting me to speak, especially on a topic which is very important, and it is also a topic which is very close to my heart. So we'll be showing PowerPoint presentation. I will be showing to you. And before that, I will just tell one thing, that one of the greatest paradoxes today in consciousness research is the question, how can qualia develop from non-qualia? Or how can this whole world of colors, variety of music, and all the great things that you find, all the variegated things, how can they develop from things, stuff, no, from which physics and chemistry are made, from just inert matter, how they can develop from that. And that is what David Chalmers, which is one of the most important consciousness researchers, he tells that that is a hard problem of consciousness. Means that the science can solve all other problems, that how consciousness works and these dynamics, these mechanisms, by its applications. But the fundamental question, how can something so colorful, so vibrant, so multivariated, how can it arise from a mass of inertia, a mass of inert particles, from the inconscience? So that is a very important question, and that question has never been answered. And together with it is linked one fundamental question in metaphysics, which also has never been answered, that how one became many, how one became many. You see, even Swami Vivekananda, he has said that this, it has been always described that one became many by Maya, which we ordinarily call illusion. But then Swamiji said that Maya is a descriptive term. It is not an explanatory term. It just describes the process. It doesn't explain. And he said that for 3,000 years nobody has answered that question. And if anybody answers it, it will be a great thing. And Sri Aurobindo has given this answer, and these two answers are related to these two great riddles. They are interrelated with each other, and we will see that how they can come out, how they come out. Of course, we'll be concentrating on the consciousness aspect at first. After some time, or maybe in the next session, we can go to the next with the next topic, how one becomes many. But both are interrelated, and to understand both, you have to understand the dynamics of consciousness as explained by Sri Aurobindo. Now, what evolves? What evolves? Does evolution takes place from something which is zero, from something which is blank? It is not like that. Sri Aurobindo explains that whatever evolves has actually been involved. Whatever is evolving has actually been involved. Or in other words, the superconscious has come down into the inconscience. The superconscious has come down into the inconscience, from where evolution will start. Now, it's a very difficult thing, extremely difficult concept. How the superconscious can come down? What do you mean by superconscious? How does it come down? What is the grammar? Does it come down like that, or it follows a rule, it follows a pattern, it follows a pathway, a trajectory? How is it? How is that possible? So we'll just go to the PowerPoint so that you could understand it a bit easier. So এটা কি করলি? করে দে কোনটা? So this is the great riddle that Sri Aurobindo answers, that the superconscious underwent a descent to get involved in the inconscious. Now, why did it undergo that descent? Why did it want to descend? Why? Now, it is very difficult to answer that question. One can say that such was his will, or in other words, in a roundabout way, might be something muttered, something expressed, let there be darkness. You see, when evolution will start, then the opposite statement will be issued, let there be light. But now when the descent is happening, then this was the will, that let there be darkness. So he called this process of involvement of the superconscious down to the inconscious. He called this process involution. Remember, this is a technical term used by Sri Aurobindo in the consciousness research, because in medical science, involution refers to something else, that when a person becomes very old and the body shrinks, then we call that there is an involution is happening. In medical terms, we call that. But here we are not using in that medical sense. We are using the word technically in the consciousness sense. Now, what is going to come down? The superconscious is going to come down. What is the superconscious? The superconscious, what is the superconscious? What is going to come down? It is not something, it is not something very strange that is going to come down. It is something which has always been conceived, which has always been explored by great mystics, by great yogis, who have described that the ultimate reality, if it could be described in words, because you cannot always describe the reality in words, if it could be described in words, that ultimate reality was called Satchidananda. It is Satchidananda is a triune entity. Now, what do you mean by triune? Because it has three components: existence, which is Sat; consciousness, which is Chit; and bliss, which is Ananda. But these components are not additive. They do not add with each other. You see, that is that you have to remember. This is the same thing in three different poises. So Satchidananda has been experienced as is the reality which is experienced as Satchidananda, and it is unmanifest. It is there at the unmanifest sphere, and it is the same thing in three different poises. So they are not three additive terms. And then there are three different poises, but these poises become important, and they can become separate as the consciousness comes down, down, down. So that is a descent. When a descent happens, then Satchidananda, when it descends, these things can get separate. So existence, you see, and then Sri Aurobindo has modified consciousness or Chit as Chit Shakti, or consciousness force. So according to Sri Aurobindo, it's not only Sat, Chit, Ananda, which is usually known, but Shat, Chit Shakti, Ananda. Why Chit Shakti? Because Sri Aurobindo explained that consciousness and energy are intertwined. You see, consciousness and energy are intertwined with each other. They're covalent with each other. Consciousness would be immobile if there was no energy. So consciousness, if it wants to act out, if it wants to become active, if it wants to create something, then it has to have an energy inside, and that energy is automatically involved in it. It is not something energy coming and adding to it. It is an energy that is involved in that consciousness. So it is involved. Shakti is involved in Chit, and that's why it is called Chit Shakti. Now Sat becomes the essence of everything, and in this poise it is known as the self. In Indian metaphysics, Sat, existence, it becomes the essence of everything in the universe, and in this poise it is known as the self. That is why we say that the self is there everywhere, that the Atma is everywhere. Everything is in the Atma, and the Atma is in everything. We can say that because it's the same existence that has come down as the self. And the Chit Shakti builds the multiverses. Chit Shakti, the consciousness force, builds the multiverses, the multiple universes it is built. And Ananda, of course, gives the value aspect of the manifestation. Ananda gives the value aspect of the manifestation. So you see, why of manifestation? Why is there? Why the hell the trouble has been taken for the manifestation to occur? It is just for the sake of the bliss or the Ananda, the joy of the manifestation. Now, the supreme reality descends along parallel lines. There are many parallel lines of descent. If you are very interested, then I think that one of the best articles on these lines of descent is by one of the foremost sadhaks of the ashram. I would say that one who had advanced the most in the path showed by Mother and Sri Aurobindo, that is Nalinikanta Gupta, and he has a beautiful article called The Lines of Descent of the Consciousness. And you can go to that. It is available, I think, also in the internet. And the supreme reality descends along parallel lines. Now, I have given 5 parallel lines, but there are other parallel lines also. So many parallel lines are descending simultaneously. Now, this descent is not taking place. You see, it is not taking place in temporal time as we think. It is something that is happening in a non-temporal sphere. You see, you see the relation between one and many. It is not a relation in time. It is a relation in consciousness. It's very difficult also. So it is in some other universe, something is happening. You cannot relate that with the way in which we relate time in this universe, or we understand time in this universe. So we should not confuse the temporal factor when we are talking about a movement of descent. It is just happening, and we have to understand it psychologically, or we have to understand it logically. So the short distance from everything, as we said, and not only it projects the soul element, it will also when it comes down to the inconscious, it will be present as a soul spark, as just a spark. And because it is a spark, why was it present as a spark? Why? Because in the inconscious everything is deformed, and you cannot deform a spark. You see, in the inconscious everything is deformed. All that is there, all the superlatives in the superconscious, when they come down to the inconscious, they're deformed. So that's how that beauty becomes ugliness, truth becomes falsehood, light becomes darkness, knowledge becomes ignorance. But a spark, just a spark, you can't deform a spark. And that was necessary, that the spark should be there in its glory and it should not be degraded. So it is the soul spark in the inconscious which has finally come down from the Sat. And the Chit Shakti descends along three different lines. There are three different lines of the Chit Shakti. Now, we will try to understand them, and we will not have much time for the third one. So one is the typal worlds. You see, when the consciousness force is descending, it is not descending in a haphazard way. While it is descending, it is building worlds. It is building many worlds, many universes it is building, until it comes to the inconscious and to the earth consciousness. So between the highest superconscious and the earth consciousness, there are other worlds also. And these worlds are called typal worlds. Sri Aurobindo calls them typal because they are non-evolutionary worlds. So they are not evolving. They are not evolving. So they are worlds that have been created. We'll come to these worlds because it is very important, very difficult also. Might be you have to understand it number of times when you go over these slides afterwards. If you are interested, I think that Vladimir will send you the PowerPoint presentation. When you see that the typal worlds, they are arranged in a sequential way. And then the personalities of the divine. You see, the supreme is not only present as principles. When it is present as a principle, it is coming down in the as a typal world. It can be present as personality, and that personality also comes down. The divine personality comes down, and while coming down, it also suffers degradation. And it is a very interesting topic. And mind you, it is a topic to which all traditions in the world can relate. It is such interesting. And then, of course, consciousness force can descend as an embodied being, as an avatar. But we will not have much time today for that. Only remember that the avatar is necessary. Avatar is necessary to be a forerunner of the race. You see, the avatar is the forerunner of the race. Every time avatar comes, he advances the humanity by one step further. And then an avatar is needed in flesh and blood, because the material envelope of our bodies, they need a jerk, they need a shock. And unless the consciousness force comes down with in the avatar form, that jerk cannot be given. And what we call the universal mother principle, the great mother, the world mother, is actually the Chit Shakti in a form which is an embodied form of the mother principle. And Ananda, as I told, that Ananda descends to be the what you call the main motivation of the whole manifestation that is coming. Now these typal worlds, very interesting how these typal worlds are produced. The supreme reality undergoes self-limitation. The supreme reality gets limited by itself. So progressive self-limitation, and this produces a descending hierarchy of typal worlds. Ultimately, they will culminate in the inconscious. So the supreme reality will come down as typal worlds, and these typal worlds, they do not have matter as a starting point. Because they don't have matter as a starting point, we can't perceive them through our material senses. We can't perceive it ordinarily unless you go to the inner being and develop inner senses. With our external senses, you can't perceive these worlds because they do not have matter as a starting point, and each world has the powers above it involved. So, and these are differentiated worlds. So there is the differentiated world of supermind, overmind, mind, life, matter. All things that will evolve are also present there as fixed planes, fixed types they are present. All those things that will, you see, life will evolve, but life is present at the typal world of life energy. It is present as a fixed type. So mind will evolve here in the evolutionary trajectory, but there it is present as a fixed plane. It is present as a fixed plane. And just to make a little bit of what you call, make it easy, this we just concentrate on this, that actually it is the one absolute which, while it is marching towards the multiplicity to form the manifestation, it becomes fragmented, it loses its suppleness, it becomes dense. And if there was no density, we would not have been produced, matter would not have been produced. And in matter, consciousness buries itself completely pulverized into mutually exclusive grains. And the supreme will, which had ordered the universe, no, that also undergoes a self obliteration, and it becomes a mere mechanized drive. But remember, even when it is a mechanized drive, it carries some memory. It carries some memory that it has come from the Supreme. That is why the electrons are not stopping. You see, otherwise the electrons can decide to stop rotating and the whole world will collapse. But the electrons are not stopping their rotation. They have a mechanical energy with which they go on, because the luminous will has come down and become that mechanical drive. So it is carrying, still that memory is being carried. Now, these non-evolutionary worlds, they do not progress, and whereas Earth is an evolutionary world, it is not perfect. You see, the typal worlds are perfect in themselves. The world of mind, typal mind is perfect. The typal life world is perfect. Earth is not perfect. But in the imperfection is the urge towards the many-sided perfection. Otherwise, evolution cannot grow. You see, for evolution to proceed, you have to have an urge to go make yourself more and more perfect. Now, the forces of the typal worlds, these are very interesting. So some represent powers of light, some represent powers of darkness. So some of these forces represent the powers of light. Some of these forces represent the powers of darkness. An aesthetic sense of human mind have given symbolic forms to these powers. The powers of light are symbolized as gods, goddesses, angels, heavenly messengers, holy spirits. Different religions, different traditions have different names for the same thing, for the same thing. And powers of darkness, of course, everybody has no controversy. All traditions have agreed on the powers of darkness. For the powers of light, we have differences in how we conceive them, whether we conceive them as gods or angels. But the powers of darkness, we are all same. Is the same devil, is the same Satan, is the same thing. Only in India, we have classified them in a different way. Osura, Rakshasa, and Pishacha, the beings of the mentalized vital, middle vital, and the lower vital. You have the elementals described by Theosophists. So it's the same thing, the forces of the typal worlds. You see that these forces are representing the powers of light and are representing the powers of darkness. And this is a difficult slide, but the personality descends. You see the supreme person who is the Purushottam. Purushottam means the Satchit Ananda is there. Sat is the knower, Chit is the doer, Ananda is the lover. And this knower, doer, lover, when it comes down into the supermind, because in the supermind has to manifest the unmanifest. It is where the programming takes place. How the one will become many, that programming is done in the supermind. And to do the programming, it has actually present the whole stuff in two ways. One poise of being and one in a poise of becoming. So that's Purush Prakriti. And they become the seed realities of Ishvara and Ishwari. And you see that Ishvara and Ishwari also have, they have also their seed ideas. They also give rise to seed principles of wisdom, strength, harmony, and perfection, which have again feminine and masculine, what you call, perspectives. We are not going into that. At the level of overmind, it is the abode of gods who are different poises of one godhead. Why at the level of overmind is the abode of gods? Just will come to the next slide when I will tell you, which is the psychological importantly, which is very psychologically important. So the supreme person becomes Purush Prakriti in the supermind becomes the Bayun reality in the supermind. In the overmind, it becomes the great gods. Between the overmind and the mind, it gets fragmented to become the lesser gods. The lesser gods are formatures who give forms to the expressions. And in the mind, the same person becomes what we are, ego-bound individual. And when this consciousness touches the vital, then the Osura, the perverse power, the intolerably arrogant, mentalized, vital power that comes. And when it comes further down, then you have the Rakshasa, the violent, insatiate hunger, which is represented in the Rakshasa. And along with the demon is the Demona, the guardian angels, the gods of beauty, delight, the Gandharvas, Kinnaras, Dionysius, Apollo. All these things are also there along in the feminine aspect of this middle vital. And the lower vital, you know, that the Pisacha, the jinn, the ghost, the ghoul, the vampire. And when consciousness touches matter, then you have, then the personality becomes more fragmented to produce this kind of things, which are known as imps, elves, goblins, gnomes, fairies, dryads, naiads, and ultimately inert particles in the matter. So whenever you have seen in mythology, whenever you have seen in the older stories and older things, or in the older scriptures, when you have found that all these things are mentioned, they have not come from fancy, but they have come from some experience, by the experience with which the great yogis, the great masters, they had contacted these tribal worlds, and they gave expression to those realities for us. So the Supreme Person is a triune reality, but animus, unmanifest. No? So to manifest, it must be represented as being and becoming in the supermind, which produces the seed realities: wisdom, strength, harmony, perfection, or the Ishvara, Ishwari. No? You know that as Ishwari, they are known as the Maheshwari, Mahakali, Mahalakshmi, Mahasaraswati. And as Ishvara, they are known as the Mahavir, as Balaram, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha. Now, what is the third paragraph I would want you to concentrate? The unity at the supermind, which was total, integral, and inalienable. At the overmind, it is that is a dilution. It becomes a harmony between one and the many. You see, the one and the many are inseparable in the supermind. Though it was decided, it was programmed that one and the many will manifest, but still they are in an inalienable unity. But at the overmind, there is a harmony. They are just complementaries which are in a harmony. Therefore, in overmind, there is unity, there is multiplicity, but unity is an immanent Godhead controlling the many in different poises. So in the overmind, unity is there, multiplicity is there, but not like the supermind where everything is intertwined or they are same. In the overmind, there is a separation, and in that separation, there is a separation, a psychological separation, where the unity is a Godhead which is controlling the many in different poises. That is, and this is the genesis of the overmind God. The overmind God is actually an unity that is controlling the many in different poises. It is the same thing. You see, you just understand it in a psychological thing. And then the great gods, they have also their derivatives. Now, the formations of the tribal worlds are expressive, not determinative. So each form represents a fixed principle of creation, and they do not evolve. And the powers serving darkness, falsehood, ignorance, they were given a chance to express themselves. They were given a chance so that it was needed for a full play of all elements before the supreme harmonization could occur. So a chance was given to them. Now, evolution is exactly opposite, but actually not opposite in that sense, because all powers manifest one after another in the earth consciousness. You see, it's not parallel to them, as because they are all hanging in the cosmic consciousness. The tribal worlds are hanging in the cosmic consciousness. So that is the tribal plane of mind, the life, the matter, everything is hanging there in the cosmic consciousness. But evolution is happening in the earth consciousness, and all powers are manifesting one after another in earth consciousness. That is why I said that it is opposite, but not exactly the opposite. And each higher plane, of course, indicates the preceding planes. Now, there are two motivators for evolution. You see,
Soumitra, can I interrupt a little bit there? There is a question here, because you went through involution of the typal worlds very fast. So there is a question to clarify the three forms of Ishvara, and if you could just a little bit kind of go back to one slide back, and from there you again come back to the evolution slide of previous slide. Yeah, this of Ishvara and Ishvari, where you were mentioning. Could we?
this is in the supermind. You see, when
Thank you.
in the supermind, this the seed realities of the absolute consciousness are formed, and these seed realities, what you call in today's terms, I would tell that they are spiritual archetypes, not archetypes in the Jungian sense, but again Noninida has used the word archetypes for them also. So I would say that they are spiritual archetypes. And so these seed principles of wisdom, strength, harmony and perfection, so they can have the poise either of the masculine principle or the poise of the feminine principle, and in that in this both these poises they complement each other. So when in the as the Ishwari, then the wisdom, strength, harmony and perfection are known in our tradition as Maheshwari, Mahakali, Mahalakshmi and Mahasaraswati. Whereas Sri Aurobindo took some words from the Vaishnava tradition to describe the same things when they are present in the Ishvara poise, and which he has named from the Vaishnava tradition as Mahabir, Balaram, Pradyumna and Aniruddha. So these are the archetypes. If you see from psychological point, and if you forget these metaphysical things, it's just the seed realities or the what you call the real ideas or the main what you call the seed principles, which will be necessary for programming the manifestation. What is the supermind? The supermind, actually, you see that I said that how one became the many. One became the many because in the supermind there was a programming done, and that programming, that Satchitananda was programmed to manifest. And to program to manifest the unmanifest, when it is programmed to manifest, then the first thing that you have to build out, you have to bring out are the spiritual archetypes, which will be on which will be acting as the templates for the whole manifestation to occur. So we see in that psychological way, again bringing in too much metaphysics in a very short time will get things complicated. So I just I'm emphasizing on the psychological factor. So Sri Aurobindo called these the real ideas or the seed ideas or the seed realities or absolute truth forms. So all these things, they will be, they have been what you call programmed in a way when they will be amplified, and each programming will follow all these things. All what will be manifest in the world will actually be manifested and based on the templates that have been provided by the seed ideas.
Thank you. That was very, very clarifying. Thank you very much.
So now evolution, now I would say, why are the typal worlds hanging in the cosmic consciousness? What work they are doing? What for they are there? Evolution will work from below or automatically, which science has told us. But no, Sri Aurobindo tells us that it is necessary. Why? There are 2 points. I have given 1 point, and the other point I will tell, which I have not written. When evolution occurs, there is an evolutionary necessity, a pressure that builds up from below. But at every level, from the parallel worlds, one influence is coming. So when evolution is evolving life, then from the typal world of life energy in the cosmic consciousness, some influence is coming. When evolution is manifesting mind, then from the typal world of the mind, some influence is coming. Why is that? That is necessary, because if these influences didn't come from the higher worlds, then from below the inconscience is so powerful, so powerful, that it would not allow the evolution to take place. It would draw it, like the gravity, like the pull of the gravity, it would pull down everything, because the inconscience is very, very strong. Remember, the inconscience is very powerful, very strong. So it will just pull it down so that it is kept up. So there is a hook that is also pulling it up. Somebody is pushing from below, and there is somebody, and a hook has been applied by the divine to pull them up. And that hook is that influence coming from these worlds, from the typal worlds. And second thing, because you need the influence of the typal worlds at every level of the evolutionary manifestation, you cannot manufacture a plane of consciousness in a laboratory. This is the main reason why science will always fail to make or to develop a plane of consciousness in a scientific laboratory, because this is what will be missing. Then what will be missing is that influence from the typal world. Unless that comes, that manifestation will not occur. So this is a very interesting thing which you can take up for psychological research, or you want to develop that point. And then I have to understand, then Sri Aurobindo's evolution is in very different denouements it is given. So Sri Aurobindo actually is speaking of a cosmic evolution. he is speaking of a cosmic evolution. The scientists talk about biological evolution and other types of evolution. We have so many types of evolution that are described, but Sri Aurobindo is speaking of a cosmic evolution where the consciousness force is unfolding planes of consciousness. So and then this is Sri Aurobindo's main view, that the mind principle is not the culmination, that mind is not the summit, mind is not the end. There can be higher principles that can manifest, and there can be higher beings that can manifest. But at present, then again Sri Aurobindo's answer when he was asked this question, that how is it that you say that the evolution has not stopped with matter, it will with the mind, it will go on, that why we are not having more species? Then Sri Aurobindo answered, just at this moment the force of evolution is evolving new powers of consciousness rather than new living forms. So just now it is busy with evolving new powers of consciousness rather than new living forms. And with the human mind, the substitution of a conscious from a subconscious evolution is possible. Means so long evolution was occurring automatically by its own pressure. But now with the appearance of the human mind, the mind has to cooperate. And so the evolution will have a change of denouement. And when the mind cooperates, you see, these the powers of consciousness will evolve. It's not the new species or new type of monkeys or new type of apes that are going to evolve. It's the new powers of consciousness that are going to evolve. And these powers, of course, will modify the form. And we know, Mother has described the supramental form. Now, the soul spark I told in the inconscious, the soul spark which came down into the inconscious is sparks of the formation of a being from the chaotic stuff in the inconscious. In the inconscious contains the opposite of the superconscious. So if in the superconscious there is light, there is in darkness in the inconscious. If there is knowledge in the superconscious, there is ignorance in the inconscious. If there is love in the superconscious, there is hatred in the inconscious. If there is no ego in the superconscious, there is ego in the inconscious. So everything is there in the opposite. And the soul spark is just sparking of it is just triggering of the formation of a chaotic stuff. Something has to build up from that mud, and a mass of inconscient matter gathers around the scaffolding, which on emerging becomes the ego. Now this is an interesting point. You see, in India we say that we are born because we are the children of immortality, which is right, because the soul spark has come from the immortal spheres. So we are the children of immortality. But in Semitic religion, sometimes it is said that man is a born sinner. So there is a partial truth in it, because when we are actually evolving, we are evolving from the chaotic stuff in the inconscious, which contains all that falsehood, all that darkness, all that mud, all that what you call all the mire, and all that negative things are there, falsehood and suffering and ignorance and death, all there are there in the inconscious. And from there something is being formed. So we are beginning from all the negative things. That's why when it is said that we are a born sinner, there's a partial truth in it, but the actual truth is that we are born from the immortality, because we are children of immortality, because if the fiat or the dictate had not come from above, the evolution would not have started. Now this soul spark is supporting the scaffolding. The scaffolding is actually becoming the ego. The scaffolding around which the matter is being organized becomes the ego, and the psychic being, the soul spark that supports from behind, it grows into the psychic being through many births. And this is something, of course, it requires much differentiation to understand what is psychic being. We cannot do justice to the psychic being by compressing it in so small words in this time. But just remember that the psychic being is what that is supporting the manifestation, but it is supporting from the fourth dimension. You see, it is supporting from the fourth dimension, beyond our third dimension. The third dimension is the space which contains our viscera. When people sit down for meditation and they told them to go concentrate inside, go to the depth of your being, where you will find the psychic, many people end up in concentrating on the third dimension, the space which contains the viscera, and they end up there. But actually it is beyond that. Now at an optimal point, the psychic being can replace the ego, because the psychic being is in the fourth dimension, and the fourth dimension is eternity and infinity. So the fourth dimension is something beyond the manifestation. So the fourth dimension means that psychic influence from the fourth dimension means that your personality is going to change. Once you are no longer under the influence of the time and space bound ego, you are under the influence of eternity and infinity. And the psychic being itself is a projection of the Jivatma or the universal self, which is again a derivative of the transcendental self. Again, all these things are very, it is very difficult to compress them in a very short way. But without talking about the psychic being, we cannot talk about Sri Aurobindo's evolution. Now, the psychic being, it will carry the deepest imprints which will outgrow the individual lifespan. You see, this is one of the most marvelous things in the evolutionary trajectory of Sri Aurobindo, that consciousness will outlive the individual lifespan. Now, how it will outlive? How it will outlive? Because the deepest impressions, the deepest impressions in our life, only they are there, they will be kept in the psychic being. You see, everything will not be kept. Most of the things in our life, they will go in the cosmic waste paper basket. Deepest impression. If I ask a 50-year-old person, can you name 10 events which have the deepest impression on the inside of your inside? People fumble. People cannot even tell 5. Perhaps the first time one saw death. Perhaps the first time one saw the Himalayas, the Himalayan peaks. Perhaps the first time one fell in love. How many? You can tell. Even in 50 years, the deepest of the deepest impressions, you will have only very few. So these will remain in the psychic being, and as memory templates. When a person has passed away, when a person has been dead, but the psychic being will carry the memory templates in the cosmic consciousness, and it can influence not one person but many persons. Again, I think Vladimir will one day surely agree to have a special program on rebirth, where it will be seen that how Sri Aurobindo's rebirth is totally different from the usual consensus of rebirth. So that is a memory template that has been memory templates which were there in Beethoven's psychic being, which is there in the cosmic consciousness, can influence many people who are open to Beethoven's music. Beethoven's music, you see, Beethoven's last words were while he was dying, that I shall hear in heaven, because I think he was aware of the eternity and the infinity of the work that he had done. However, a powerful transcript can be transferred to a particular evolving being. A very powerful transcript can be transferred to a particular evolving being. So in that way, one psychic being which had been very worked upon, which was worked upon very nicely, very delicately, very consciously, can be transferred. That it will produce a transcript that can be transferred in toto to somebody else. But otherwise, usually what happens is the memory templates of the most beautiful events in the life are kept in the cosmic consciousness to influence others. So that, which means rebirth is not an individual phenomenon but a cosmic phenomenon. And this is where Sri Aurobindo is different. Sri Aurobindo has emphatically said that the old concepts of rebirth have too much dwelt on individuality, but actually he sees rebirth as a cosmic phenomena. So one enters birth not in an isolated way, but in the life of the whole, and thus inherits the life of the whole. So one enters birth not in an isolated way. Ram doesn't become Sham, Tom doesn't become Dick in that way in which you think, but it is my psychic memories that are there in the cosmic consciousness, and they enter into the cosmos again in a different life. And so one enters in a way that one inherits the life of the whole. The very interesting thing. Now, where do the descendant ascent culminate? See, it was traditionally believed that the individual soul dissolved in the spirit. You see, Mother has built on this in the agenda, that only Sri Aurobindo has got a different viewpoint. It was always believed that the individual soul is ephemeral and it is going to dissolve, it is going to merge, it is going to melt into the super soul. Only Sri Aurobindo has a different view. Only Sri Aurobindo has a different view. You see, Sri Aurobindo is unique. And this uniqueness has many perspectives. One of the greatest perspectives is this view that the individual retains his uniqueness as a psychic being, and it joins with the Jivatma in a new denouement. So it doesn't dissolve in it, it doesn't merge in it, it doesn't get lost in the greater soul, but it just joins with the greater soul in a new type of arrangement, new agreement. And this joining takes place in the supramental consciousness. And what happens? It results in the supramental personality becoming incarnate in the physical body. So that is a very great goal of the evolutionary trajectory that Sri Aurobindo has presented to us, that the supramental personality can become incarnate in the physical body. Again, we are doing injustice to the word supramental, because to understand this sentence, we have to understand what does Sri Aurobindo mean by the supramental personality. But just remember that it is the summit of the present evolutionary cycle, when a human being will grow into the what you call the image of the divine. So matter becomes radiant and the human being becomes a living form of the divine. So the supramental personality, in very short, is that matter becomes radiant, so the human being becomes a living form of the divine, and one crosses from ignorance to knowledge. Now the mother.
Dr. Basu, I'm sorry to interrupt. We're getting multiple requests. If you could just kindly slow down. I think many of the participants are struggling to keep up with your.
Oh, I will just finish because this is the last slide and then I will come back. Otherwise, time will not make. We just end this, give this last slide. After that, there's a quote by Aurobindo, and then
Yeah,
I can
please,
come
please.
back. So now the mother had once had a very powerful spiritual vision, which she confided as late as July 1st, 1970, and she was wondering what will be the template of the new being that she wanted to form, the new being that will be evolving. What will be the template? And because she didn't want the inconscience to be the beginning of the new being, because the inconscience would bring in the stain, the inconscience would bring in all the imperfection, the inconscience would bring in, would throw all what is negative. So she wanted to make the new being in such a way that from the very beginning one was sure that it would be born in a template which was pure, because we are born from the inconscience which is impure. And then see, it came to her that the psychic being was the template of the new creation. So the psychic being is the one that could materialize and become the supramental being. It is a very difficult thing to conceptualize, but when with the psychic being, what happens that when it is made a template, then you have a different type of creation where from the beginning you have cut out all the negative things, that have come out. The old creation started with the ego as a nodal point around which life was organized. The new creation has to be organized around the psychic being. So this is, we'll go back again to what Radhesh said, that this was again, I would say that the soul spark that was there in the inconscience through many lives, it grows into a personality, a soul personality, which is called the psychic being. And the psychic being is there in the fourth dimension, and it can come forward, it can rule us. And for the psychic being, it carries the deepest imprints of our whole life events, all our memories. Most of our memories are not carried from one life to other life. All most of the memories, they are ordinary memories, they have no value. It is only the deepest memories, the deepest imprints of your memory, the memories which are very spiritually significant, psychologically significant, historically significant, those memories will be retained in the psychic being. And this psychic being will take these memories and will keep them as memory templates in the cosmic consciousness after the person has passed away, after the death of that individual person. And these memory templates that will be there, they can influence one person or many persons afterwards, because these memory templates are not linked to one individual. They are there in the cosmic, when they are in the cosmic consciousness, they are being thrown into the great void, and so they can act independently. And of course, you can say that in a very powerful person was born as another person. Sometimes we see the whole memory, one remembers the whole memory, as mother remembered that she was Queen Elizabeth I, but she remembered because the Queen Elizabeth I had a very powerful psychic being, and that very powerful transcript was transferred. And there, because of the transference, that you can say that evolving being or someone who is being born can get a what you call a psychic being which has already been formed from some past life in toto, in what you call in a greater way. But actually it comes in fragments, it comes
It's,
only in fragment memories.
may I add to this? It is what we know as vibhutis, and the elements or the qualities, the aspects of the personality can be born in different persons, in different. Yep.
Yes, yes,
Beautiful. I would request you now, because we have 10 minutes left, and
yes, yes.
maybe we will extend a little our time. We have.
I will just not read out. This is just
Mhm.
whether this is also whether Aurobindo certitude that this is going to happen. That is the I like that, because a little more and the new life's doors shall be carved in silver light, with his aureate roof and mosaic floors in a great world bare and bright. That is the certitude that he has given, that this is going to happen. Something is going to happen, and এটাকে বন্ধ করে দে তো। So we are sure that something is going to happen, something very good is going to happen. এই ওপরটা চলে আসবে। হ্যাঁ, এটা
Yeah,
হ্যাঁ না প্রেজেন্টে চলে
you
আসবে।
can
So
stop your.
we can ask somebody, we can skip, we can go on. Anybody asking questions, or in the chat box one can go.
Yeah, there are several. There are 14 questions here waiting for you. So
Wow.
that's the point.
But we don't have 14 minutes. That's
No, but I hope they will be answered in a kind of in this connections. So you could see. I would voice them. The question from Karundas. Could you repeat the name of the person who has the article on multiple lines of consciousness, please?
Nolini Kantagupta.
Nolini Kantagupta. The other question, what causes mental illness and how is it healed? Thank you.
You see, we are talking about the different planes which are evolving, and so there are many ways in which mental illness happens. Now we are talking about the different planes, the mental, vital, and the physical, and when there is a disharmony between the planes, and disharmony is very natural because these three planes that they don't have what you call synchronicity. They do not synchronize among themselves, and because they are modulated by the ego, and the ego is made up from these three elements, so the ego is biased, and this is one of the reasons why we suffer, why many of our illnesses happen. So this is one way that happens, and the other is that when we are in a very rush, when we try to forcibly go, you see, this is especially for spiritual aspirants who try to forcibly take the plunge into consciousness before making the harmonization of the lower portion ready, the vital, physical, and the mental. They have to be ready and harmonized before you take a higher plunge. Now, before that, if you take a higher plunge, then you are sure that you are going to be ill. Then there is other reason. We are talking about the outer personality. Behind the outer personality, there is an inner personality, and there is a mismatch between the outer and the inner personality. Then also one can become mentally ill. So again, in the gap between the outer personality and the inner personality, there are intermediate zones where one can get lost and can be mentally ill with delusions and hallucinations. And then you have, from the cosmic consciousness, you have influences coming inside your inner being, and you don't know how to modulate them, you don't know how to deal with them, and they can cause a lot of disharmony, and they can actually cut off the soul from the rest of the being. It is a very complicated thing, but it requires a very separate session to understand consciousness and the way consciousness produces problems in the system, and especially the mental problems.
Yeah, there is also a question from Mona Singh. Relation between one and many is not relation in time, but it is relation in consciousness.
Consciousness.
Could you kindly explain this?
Because you see that our conception of time is that our conception of linear time is our very easy way to understand things, which is actually not the truth. At every moment, the past, present, and future are present together. You see that we are, because we don't understand things, we try to divide linear time into past, present, and future, but time is actually circular, time is global, and time is simultaneous. Things are happening simultaneously, not successively. That to understand, make that point, that all these things are happening actually simultaneously. They are happening, they are not happening successively, that we will understand them in terms of linear time. So the one is always there, the many is always there, and only it is the poise in which you are in, from where you are seeing. You can see the whole thing from the poise of one, you can see the whole thing again simultaneously at the same point from the poise of many. So then you have to go understand, for the proper answer of this question, you have to understand what is integral cognition. See, you see the road in front of your house, it looks something, and if you see it from a 5-story building, it looks another. If you see it from a plane, it will look still in a different way. But from the integral cognition, you can see all the things together simultaneously at one go. So then at the level of integral cognition, time doesn't happen, or time doesn't occur in the way we are thinking. It occurs, and then it is happening in many planes where the way we see time here may not be occurring there. In that typal world, the time might be not in the way that we are seeing. So many things are happening. You can't understand things in a temporal way. So it's a non-temporal way. It's better to understand these things in a psychological or in a logical sense. Logic of the infinite. You will say not logic of the rational mind, but logic of the infinite.
Beautiful, thank you. There is a related question here. The typal world is unchanging. Would the Buddhist perspective propose that a deconditioning process is required to reach a primordial state associated with this typal world or being? On the other hand, an integral yoga perspective acknowledges the importance of this deconditioning process reached through meditative practice, but also values the evolutionary process of becoming. In other words, a deconditioning process is required to let go of delusion, Maya, while the evolutionary process is needed for consciousness to expand in complexity to reach a state of perfection, wholeness. It's a very complex kind of statement, I would rather say,
I
rather than.
think I think it is a very complex statement. In fact, to answer this question, we have to go into more fundamentals. That what Aurobindo means by the divine Maya,
Mhm.
and many things I think will be we can understand from that. No? Because when there was this when we decided that many will happen, and then in infinite ways things will manifest, and when that fiat was given, the decree was given that let there be infinite possibilities manifest, and then what happened was that there was a possibility that there will be chaos. There would have been chaos, no? With the infinite possibilities to form a universe, to form a definite line of action. It would have been chaotic with all the infinite possibilities at the same time manifesting one after another. So there was a divine law which was actually making things happen just in the proper place. And this divine law that was making things happen in the proper place is the higher Maya or the divine Maya, which Sri Aurobindo says, but which others I think don't appreciate. Because when I was even a very young student, wherever I used to go and speak of Sri Aurobindo, the first thing people used to tell me, people from other disciplines, that Sri Aurobindo doesn't understand Maya, or he has no concept of Maya or something like that. I used to get puzzled until I came to know of what he talks about, the divine Maya and the supermind. So you see that when you see the thing from the you see Buddhist also is thinking, he's seeing the thing from the field of global cognition, which is the overmind world. But if you see the field from the integral cognition, the whole thing will change. You see, it is the way you are perceiving it. The Buddhist way is all right. What he is saying is the Buddhist way is all right, and it is always like that. If from the perspective of the global cognition, it was always like that. But when you go for integral cognition, then again the whole thing changes. The whole denouement, the whole programming changes. So perhaps we have to find, and to understand this, we have to dwell into those things, which would need a very separate session to understand. But it's very interesting, and very many thanks that this question has been raised.
Beautiful, thank you. Um, there are more questions here, of course. If our soul or consciousness is to be evolved, what effect does past karmas have in our present life?
This karma in Sri Aurobindo's sense, in Sri Aurobindo's perspective, is totally different from the geometrical rigidity in which karma is placed by our traditional systems. So Sri Aurobindo doesn't view karma in that way, that it is just the soul is that we are evolving, and for the evolution we have certain experiences which you have to outgo and then go into newer experiences. And then in Savitri, at the beginning, he has said that if you can go and identify with the Jivatma, then at a stroke you can be free from the past karmas and can go on to have an onward journey, a new onward journey. So that is prophesied, and that is what you call presented in that way.
Mhm. So there is another question. So if we only take the essence of our lifetime over into the psychic being, do we recognize each other as individual personalities? And is there an ability to interact on this dimension? Or do we need to reincarnate into a mental, vital, physical form in order to do so?
Both are possible.
Mm.
Both are possible. You see that you can have very actually, when we are going to have a new type of Gnostic community, then our new families will be based on soul kinship. so that the first thing will always be there. We can recognize each other if we can develop the right spiritual intuition, not again intuition in the ordinary sense, but the spiritual intuition which Sri Aurobindo says. And then again, for the vast majority, you need also to be in that mental, vital, physical frame, and again start understanding things, because that is also an adventure, and that adventure should not be left out, because to again come into the world, again be born, and again find out your soulmates. So that is also an adventure that is there. If the adventure was not there, then we would not have all met, and mother would not have made us all meeting each other in this way, without any advertisement, without any sermonizing, without any missionary activities. We just came together. That's enough, the presence of that, how this force is acting.
Yeah. There is another question. There is a tremendous progress in computer-based artificial intelligence, like Zoom, for example, etc. Is this a manifestation of Sri Aurobindo's theory of evolution of consciousness?
Yeah, of course, it is an expression. It is just showing that the what he has told, that the powers of the mind which were so long hidden dormant, they will express. What he has said, Sri Aurobindo, that the time is now coming when science and spirituality will come together. The curtains between them will be drawn and they will come together. So this is also a sign that when these things are happening, then we are reaching a stage. Inside, I left because of time today, that today already scientists are talking about multiple interacting universes. So that there are multiple universes that is come to the scientific intuitive mind, that has already come. So there are many universes, not only this one universe that is interacting. So it is definitely all these things that are happening with one aim, that the difference between science and spirituality, between science and mysticism, between occultism and the non-occult worlds, they will go on diminishing, and we are going to have a greater knowledge. So of course,
Mm.
I would say that this is, in fact, this is happening at a time when people are understanding Sri Aurobindo. You
Mm.
see, many people tell why Sri Aurobindo was not read. Sri Aurobindo had written these things 100 years back, but the global mindset was not ready. The
Mm.
global mindset had to shift from a linear to a non-linear way of thinking. Only then, at a mass level, Sri Aurobindo's ideas could be spread. That is happening just now, and this artificial intelligence is also an index of that thing that is happening. So this is producing a state where the mindset is now ready to take Sri Aurobindo. This is one reason why people used to get disheartened that people masses are not understanding him. Well, at the time he was not ready. You see, it took 100 years after he wrote all these things to consolidate in the earth consciousness. And for the mind, the global mindset is just now changing. You can see that in our youth. It is changing from the linear to the non-linear way. They are wanting to have truth from all sides. The best example is that the children are now open to Harry Potter. 30 years or 40 years back, no? Even in Calcutta, with much Russian influence. No? We had so much Moscow books in Russia, from Russia 40 years back. Who would have thought that people would have read Harry Potter? You would have told them that they are non-scientific stuff. But then you see that that is interesting, because it ranges on the occult, and the mind is open to that. So and everybody is happy to read that. So this is a sign of changing times, and this artificial intelligence also is bringing us to that point where definitely the mind is coming to that plane where all this complex thought of Sri Aurobindo will now be understood. Because Sri Aurobindo's thinking is global. You have to understand why Sri Aurobindo's thought is so difficult. Because for the last 2000 years, you see, Buddha, Socrates, and Confucius were more or less contemporaries in the world of thought. And their ideas have nourished the world for the last 2000 years. All movements that have happened also had seed ideas in those thoughts. But only it is now that a new paradigm of thought is occurring. And that's Sri Aurobindo's thought, which is a multi-leveled, global, what you call different type of integral thinking is happening. And for that, also the things at the ground level are also changing. And they're changing fast.
Mm. Mm. There is a interesting question. Where do Sri Aurobindo's devotees go when they die? Great talk, thanks.
They can go to hell also. One thing is, I think the time has now come, Vladimir, we will agree that we stop differentiating between Shraminda's devotees and non-devotees, because I see that the light is there. Anybody who is open to the light will receive that light. So I gave to my communist friend, who is a complete atheist, a few Shraminda's poems. that also translated in Bengali by a non-Bengali, Priti
mm,
Singh Nahar. And then he came and told me, oh, I see, descent. Na? The word descent is very important in your paradigm. So
mm,
you see that the light is there. Anybody will take the light will grow. And unfortunately, I see that many of our people who are stamped as devotees are a bit might not be that open. They say it doesn't matter. The light is there for everyone, and everybody in the world is open to that light. We are unique in this way. You see that Sri Aurobindo has it is only our system which doesn't have an initiation. Why it is doesn't have an initiation? Because the mother's force works directly on the psychic being. That
mm,
is why we don't need an initiation, and that psychic being may be open and receptive in many people. It doesn't matter whether one outwardly knows Sri Aurobindo or not,
mm.
but what he has envisaged will come.
Yeah, absolutely agree with you. Yes. Thank you. Really a great and profound overview. Lots of to reflect upon. Very much interested in the role of the psychic being in the evolution and awakening of the human consciousness. This is some kind of statement question. Um,
Oh,
what
there's
is
somebody told about the functioning of psychedelics. I would love very much one day to talk on that,
yeah,
because I just finished this. I know the time is running out. Very interesting. He has brought this question, and who has brought this? Stefano.
mm,
Stefano has brought this question. You
yeah,
see, in 1967, we had the Summer of Love, where everybody gathered in San Francisco, all the youth, to question everything and to question anything, to
mm,
question everything and to question anything. And 1 month before that, 1 month before the Summer of Love, the mother had an LSD experience without consuming LSD. She had an LSD experience, and me and Michael have analyzed that experience fully and the meaning of that experience. And we're surprised to so know that only now the researchers are agreeing to what the mother said.
mm,
So she had the total psychedelic experience because she wanted to know. Well, at that age of 87, that
mm,
also at the age of 87, sitting there in the 18th April 1967, a month before the Summer of Love, she's experiencing what is going to happen with the Summer of Love.
mm,
Incredible. And then we have a separate session on it. It will be very enjoyable. And actually, it is a supramental experience. It's a
mm,
very great supramental experience, how the psychedelics came. And it is only after the Summer of Love that the Transpersonal Psychology Journal came into being. So it was so powerful, so very powerful movement.
mm, yeah, great. When do you feel the supramental being will come into physical manifestation?
Very difficult for me to say. As we say that we can't say things in time. As physical transformation, we can only say that it has been told to us that it will take about 3 centuries for the physical transformation to take place. But what we can say that already people have become very conscious of the physical consciousness. People have become conscious of the physical consciousness, and you see suddenly with this pandemic, people have all over the world have become a 1 degree. Suddenly they have been elevated to in the level of hygiene or level of protecting their body. So all things that are happening, they have something or the other they have in common. And Sherman in 1926 was asked that how will we know that the new age is coming? In the evening talks, he answered that before the new age comes, there will be two things. There will be a huge increase in natural catastrophes. Huge increase in natural catastrophes, which you see in earthquakes, and the pandemic is also a catastrophe in that sense. And there is a huge increase in mental patients.
Mm,
Of course, that that is by 2020, already we have entered in 2021 an age where depression has become the second disease in the world.
mm, mm.
So it is an indicator that there are positive signs, what Shri said, that things are moving also.
All right. There is another question. How does one access the fourth dimension? Thank you.
Oh, that one has to learn. That one has to learn. If you sit in meditation, I think the very simple thing that will tell you, when it's simple, when we sit in meditation and we concentrate on our inside, like that, you see that when we concentrate, two things happen. Either we go into inertia and we think that we have reached a big thing, or we can say we reach a substratum ego. Mother said a substratum ego, and we think that we have reached our self, our inmost principle, whereas you have reached the after the ego has been left, something residue remains. that which mother called the substratum ego. And then when you go still beyond and you think that we have to do something very spectacular, we usually, because our vision is limited and we don't have time, we end up feeling something in the depths of the third dimension, the space which holds our viscera. Then I will tell you that go just behind that. So it is that it is not limited by your third dimension. The fourth dimension is something still beyond, so that as if you are in the, if you are in the space and there are two spaceships, so you have to travel from one spaceship to another spaceship. In between there will be the cosmos. So like that, there is a cosmic consciousness between you and the fourth dimension. Like that, you have to cross over. So it is something of experience. One have to experience. Of course, it gives these fillers by mother's grace. It gives these fillers. It gives this, his presence is announced in ways, in roundabout ways. But then also we have to strive in our own way. We have to concentrate in the right way.
Mhm. There is another question statement. There seems to be a big difference between transhuman from the perspective of artificial intelligence and superhuman from the perspective of integral yoga.
I would say that please repeat that question.
Um, there seemed to be a big difference between transhuman from the perspective of artificial intelligence and superhuman from the perspective of integral yoga.
Of course, of course. That transhuman and the superhuman because the superhuman experience is coming from very different level from the creative consciousness it is coming. So that is why it is very different, because it is coming from a different sphere. It is coming with our all our gadgets and all. We can reach a little bit uh, beyond the higher mind. We can just touch the intuition, but beyond that we have to do, that is the discipline, that is the realm of the mystics. From there you have to go, and the supermind is totally different. It is again a different realm, again beyond the overmind. So then we can understand that it is coming from a very the supreme creative consciousness, from where the programming is made, that the creation will happen. So that you cannot translate easily into our ways that we look from below. When you look from below upwards, we can't come to that. So that you have to go to that plane and you can look from there downwards.
Mhm. There is also another question. Are the Jungian archetypes relate to typal in Sri Aurobindo's terminology?
Not exactly, except the lower in the lower typal beings. In the lower typal beings, there are some similarities you can find, which because there are these archetypal in the lower worlds. In the lower worlds, you will find that these archetypical realities which are there, they can are, of course they are reflected in Jungian things, but not the entire thing. The Jungian cosmic Jungian the collective consciousness is a very small part of the cosmic consciousness. The cosmic consciousness in Sri Aurobindo's vision is a very big thing, and the topmost part of the cosmic consciousness, the supermost part, is the overmind, and below down below is the inconscious, and the inconscious, it transcends the Freudian inconscious, it transcends the Jungian collective unconscious. So it is just Jungian collective unconscious is reflecting a one part of the cosmic consciousness which has been envisaged by Sri Aurobindo, and that of course the typal worlds and forces there, they also come into that territory.
Mhm. Wonderful. So I think we could, sorry, we cannot answer all the questions. There are many of them. We will copy them and we will send to Dr. Soumitra Basu to review them and to answer us back. So please be patient with us. We cannot answer all the questions and they are coming up more and more, so we cannot really refer to all of them. So thank you very much, Soumitra Basu, for this beautiful and interesting and invigorating presentation, which is, I'm sure it is bringing so many questions into active consciousness, and we are all interested to explore ourselves and our existence in this world, because it's very rich, multidimensional, and very meaningfully projected by Sri Aurobindo. And studying his works and diving deeper into our spiritual experiences, we may discover a totally new vision of the world and evolve into these higher levels of consciousness. Thank you for this wonderful exposition, and I hope we meet again and explore more on rebirth and other questions which we are very much interested in.
Yes, and I would just like to say a couple things here before we end. I do too also would like to thank you, Dr. Basu. And we've had over 200 people register for this webinar. We still have 15, 20 questions that remain unanswered. So what we will do with your permission is send out to the 200 registrars to see if they would be interested in an extended session, workshop or seminar for 3 to 4 hours, whatever you think would be necessary, and really take the time to go through each of those slides, because there's so much packed into any one of them that would be great if we could have some dialogue and discussion around. So with your permission, I would love to be able to reach out to all registrants to see if we have those that would like to come together in an extended discussion around this topic. Does that work for you, Dr. Basu? Is that have your permission? Okay, and then we'll get back to you before doing it. And the last thing I just wanted to mention before you all sign off is that next Saturday, we continue this discussion on the development of consciousness. So January 16th, we have Dr. Alok Pandey, who will address the deepening or going within to uncover the psychic or the soul. So he'll be addressing the movement of going deeper within the soul. And the following week, January 23rd, we'll conclude on the 4 movements with Shrdalu Ranade, and he will speak on expanding or widening into cosmic planes. So the next 2 weekends, it'll be the deepening and the widening of consciousness. We thank you all, and all these webinars are being recorded and placed both on our Facebook and on our website. Thank you.
All right, namaste, all the best. Thank you, Soumitra. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Sen. Basu.
Thank you.